Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Riding of Yorkshire series. Together with the unparished city of Hull, it forms the county of the same name. There's 172 parishes here. Which one are we in today? Welcome back to the East Riding of Yorkshire, everybody. There's nothing quite like an early morning in the crisp, clear autumnal air, and especially when you're in an area like this. This is very, very sparsely populated. It's just basically fields and farmland for as far as the eye can see. But within that field and farmland, you will find some interesting landmarks, and here's one of them. If I turn this camera around at this sign here, you'll see a dead end. Now that runs to the coast, that runs to the East Yorkshire coast, the Holderness coast. Up there, there's a farm which is called Moat Farm because the buildings basically sit on an old moat. You can still see the traces of the moat around the actual farm buildings. Now I can't film them because that is a private road, but I can tell you all about that moat and what used to stand on it. Welcome to the parish of East Garton. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. East Garton is one of the East Riding's most spread out and sparsely populated parishes. It adjoins the North Sea coast and contains several small hamlets, but there's no actual village named East Garton. Instead, what you'll find here is the village of Garton in Holderness, named as such to distinguish it from Garton on the Wolds, an East Yorkshire parish we've still yet to cover. Garton is the largest settlement in these parts, but arguably it's Grimston, right on the coast almost, which is the much more historic. The parish is completed by the hamlet of Fitling, located to the south of Garton, which contains Westfield Country Park. At the centre of the parish is the magnificent St Michael's Church, which has an interesting set of exterior lights. Garton also has a little-known conference centre as well. All three of the settlements here are tiny. Grimston, for example, is primarily just one street, save for Moat Farm and Grimston Garth, two sites which are inextricably linked together by way of the Grimston family. The last time we met them was back in Kilwick-on-the-Wolds. Grimston Garth is off limits to the public, but it's a highly significant property, housing as it does the only substantial area of woodland along the Holderness coast. So with it being so spread out and restricted, a lot of this one was visited by using the trusty old motor. Let's get the engine running and let's go. We begin in Grimston at a road sign which points us towards Moat Farm, once the site of a medieval fortified manor house. The house was the seat of the Grimston family until it burned down in the 17th century. Its former moat can still clearly be seen at the farm. As a result, the Grimstons built a brand new house to the south of the hamlet at Grimston Garth. There's more on that in a bit. Grimston has a few interesting landmarks. Paul's plantation, for example, remembers local man Paul Turner, who planted and tended this very wood. Aside from the farm, the village is basically one simple street, less than 300 metres long. It still has its very own sign though. And it still has a parish notice board. Judging by this, the community out here is exceptionally tight-knit. Mark it off, folks. Grimston has some big houses, the largest on Main Street being an old school, which was built in 1860, seen here on the left. On the right we find Paddock Cottage. This is the base of Lucky Hedgehog Rescue, which was founded by Lucy Felgate Baumberg. They currently have more than 100 hedgehogs in their care, and they're funded completely by donation. Their website is below. Just after that there's a phone box, this one housing a defib machine, which was all lit up in the early morning twilight. Other than a couple more houses, that's basically Grimston. The village used to have a pub in the 1800s called the Stag's Head. It was presumably named as such given the Grimston family crest, and speaking of them, there's one final property still to cover. So at the end of the road you can go literally no further, even though the road bends around to the left, as you can see in this shot here. You can't go any further than here, because beyond this then becomes a private property, and that private property is what I'm about to talk about in today's special section. The road at the end of Main Street leads to Grimston Garth, built to replace the original fortified house at Moat Farm. Its grounds are an excellent example of a landscape designed by the prolific late 18th century landscape gardener Thomas White. The parkland retains his characteristic perimeter plantations, with a break on the eastern side that provides a sea view. The grounds are of particular significance because they are almost the only area of woodland along the Holderness coast from Bridlington to Spurn Point. Within its grounds is a business called B&K Universal, which belongs to the American company Marshall Bioresources. They breed and sell animals globally for use in vivisection laboratories in the name of medical research. It's a very controversial business, as you can imagine, and one which has seen numerous anti-vivisection protests, including a march through Hull city centre. I'll leave you to read more about them yourself, but discretion is strongly advised. Now, as you drive away from Grimston towards Garton village, you come across this, the parish church of St Michael, which stands all on its own effectively between the two villages. There it is right there. Now this has got some interesting little lights outside it. Can you see them flickering away here? Let's get up close and personal with them and see exactly what they're all about, as well as checking out this amazing old building. The lights at St Michael's Church are a fabulous little feature. They're LEDs, but they're designed to look like flames. They're cute. The church is a Grade 1 listed building, the oldest part of which is its nave wall, which dates from the 12th century. Although hard to date accurately, it's believed the church has stood here since at least 1160, which belonged to Thornton Abbey in North Lincolnshire. Dedicated to St Michael by 1468, it's built of boulders and consists of a chancel, nave, porch and a west tower with one bell. Both the tower and the chancel were rebuilt in the early 13th century. The south aisle and chapel were added in the 14th. In the 16th century, the aisle and the chapel were refenestrated and the porch, which is mostly made of brick, was added. The church features the Grimston Mausoleum, built in the chancel in around 1820. The family are also commemorated in several windows too. Well, clearly these little lamps are on a timer because while I was filming all those shots of this church, they went out. So yeah, if you come at the right time, you can see these lights all lit up. I think they're quite cool things, that they look like flames. It's actually quite impressive, even though it's such a simple thing to do. But there we go. Right, now we're going to go for the main Garton village, and I'm going to drive through this. I'm not going to walk it because it's all spaced out all over the place. So yeah, for the next minute or so you'll see Garton from the car. Garton's official name is Garton in Holderness. This distinguishes it from Garton on the Wolds, which is close to Driffield. The village has a linear plan with open fields to the north and the south of Oldborough Road, which is the main street. This road is Back Lane, which forms a neat little loop around the village. In the 17th century, there were only a dozen or so houses here, some of which have since been removed. Of the older buildings still standing, only Blue Hall Farm is noteworthy. Since the 19th century, Garton hasn't really expanded, barring a collection of 8 20th century council houses and 1 or 2 rebuilt farmhouses. The name Garton is an Anglo-Saxon and Scandinavian hybrid, and it means farmstead in or near a triangular piece of land. I'd say that's a pretty accurate description. Anciently, Garton Parish included several detached parts of Ostwick Township, whilst the majority belonged to Roos. Ostwick is still part of Roos Parish to this day. Garton may not have much in the way of notable amenities like a school or a pub for example, but it does have a little known communal building, the East Village Meadows Conference Centre. This can be found, confusingly, at the western end of the village at Northfield Farm. Yeah, it took me a moment to get my head around that too. It's a converted farm, but it's fully equipped like all modern offices should be, and can be hired out for groups of up to 20 people. It also features 2 luxurious 4-star cottages. One of them is known as the Cottage in the Pond. Its living room overlooks a picturesque pond which was once used for filling steam engines. The other is called the Corn Mill, once used for preparing food for the farm's animals, and it still retains the old beams and the hole in the wall where the belt that drove a rolling mill passed through. It's all well worth checking out by the sounds of it. The last thing for us to check out in the parish though is Westfield Country Park. Remaining in the car was the best option here because Westfield Country Park can be found in the hamlet of Fitling. This is the most spread out settlement in the parish, and it stretches from Garton all the way to Ostwick. Aside from an old Methodist chapel and Fitling Hall, this has very little in the way of other landmarks. Westfield Country Park though is a local tourist attraction. It's essentially a holiday park, and its biggest draw would be its 37 acres of tranquil farmland, within which there's a collection of well-stocked fishing lakes. The park has 30 lodges, each with between 1 and 3 bedrooms. The majority of them have their own private outdoor hot tub. Sounds fancy. As well as offering lodges to hire, you can also buy one, ideal if you're looking for a place to get away from it all any time of year. Finally, the park has its very own on-site cafe. That's this building you can see in front of us here. It's called the Spotted Duck Tea Room, and it's usually open from Tuesday to Sunday. And that will do us for Fitling and for the parish of East Garton, perhaps one of the most varied and unusual pieces of land covered by the East Riding. Staying on these narrow country lanes, we'll continue our journey down the coast next week as we come to a village with an 18th century lookout tower. Stick around. It's worth it. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.